Because I'm watching Kemi Badenoch, and I know it's only week 2. I'm not seeing, I'm not seeing her landing loads of blows, which is frankly an open goal at the moment on the government.
It wasn't a classic, you have to say. When you're in PMQs, it's always a good idea to watch the people behind the leader to get their response to it. And there was a noticeable, I wouldn't say glumness, but they certainly were subdued, I think. There was nothing in what Kemi Badenoch did to get them roaring and shouting here, and she didn't have Keir Starmer under pressure at any point. Now, it's only 2 weeks in, so you've got to cut her a bit of slack, I think. You know, she's only just in the door, and it'll take her a little bit of time to find her feet, but I think she's already realising it's difficult. PMQs is difficult. When you're the leader of the opposition, it is tough, you know. You have to have a mixture of good questions, obviously, but a bit of a lightness of touch, a bit of humour there as well. Maybe embarrass the Prime Minister if you can, and she's not. When
you're a cabinet minister, she was business secretary, of course. I think it was her last job, wasn't it? In government. It's kind of, you can sort of, you can get away with different things. You know, you don't. It doesn't matter if you're not firing on the same cylinders as the Prime Minister because you're part of the team. But when you're the head of the team, there's a lot of things you've got to do in that job, isn't there? And having a little bit of a, I think you've got to have a bit of a twinkle in your eye, Kevin. I genuinely do. I think you've got to have a little bit of humour, and I think, and I don't say this as an insult, but I don't think she's a humour type politician. I don't think she really has that.
She's not noted for telling jokes. I mean, there's always a health warning when you mention William Hague, because he got tonked at the next election anyway, so it didn't actually make any difference to the Tories' electoral performance. However, he was very good at PMQs because he was funny. And Tony Blair wasn't great at PMQs either, so there was that dynamic going on. At least it buoyed up the troops a little bit. You know, it gives them a bit of a spring in their step, raises morale. If the leader is knocking 7 bells out of the Prime Minister every week, then it does make them feel better about themselves. So there is a lot of pressure on you. I mean, David Cameron, when he was in opposition, went up against Tony Blair as well. He was pretty good against Gordon Brown as well. You know, he just had it. You know, he just had that. As you say, it's a combination of good questions, but also a twinkle in your eye, a lightness of touch. You're able to get people laughing, you know, get people on your side, and she's not great at that.
No.
And that's been highlighted, I think, over the last couple of weeks.
I've said this a number of times. I've said it to students of politics and broadcasting and the like. The thing to Google is William Hague's speech on imagining Tony Blair as the president of Europe.
A classic.
It's stand-up comedy, isn't it?
It's brilliant.
It's absolutely...
Well, the Labour front bench, when you watch it, they're all killing themselves laughing
Even
as well.
Gordon Brown, who it's aimed at, I mean, it's such a wonderful piece of political oratory, mischievous, and hits every single button. And I couldn't do it justice by repeating some of the lines. But it's just have a look. Go onto YouTube and have a look.
He was a master at it.
He was brilliant at that.
Brilliant parliamentary performer. And we're not. I don't think it's safe to say we're not living in a golden age of political oratory at the moment.
But he wasn't a great leader, though, was he?
No, I mean, at the time of Tony Blair was, it was still when the new Labour was in its pomp.
Mr Charisma and all that.
He just got elected. He sort of cruised through that for 4 years by and large, and the Tories had just been hammered a bit like in July there, and the public weren't ready to listen. And that's part of our problem as well. That means that she's got to try even harder and do even better to make people actually give them a second glance. By the way, don't look up William Hague's speech as a 16-year-old at the Tory party conference. No, that was... It seemed to say he improved a bit after that. Yeah, because, I mean, he did get a bit of a laugh there, didn't he? But William Hague's one of those guys that looked like William Hague when he was about 11. And Farage is another one. Farage has always worn those suits since he was 10 years old. It just looks like that. So what were the big subjects at PMQs then? I know that council tax, national insurance and the impact of that all came up as well. Yeah, national insurance is the issue that's still not going away from the budget. And it wasn't just Kemi Badenoch. The Lib Dems were asking questions on that as well. And it is a problem, I think, for the government. There are, I think, maybe unforeseen consequences of them putting up national insurance for employers, because it's not just big businesses with massive profits that will be paying it. It's GP surgeries, it's charities, it's people who are, it's small businesses who are really on, the difference between profit and loss is minuscule, and all of a sudden they're looking at massively increased tax bills, and that is something that for a government that wants to cut waiting lists.
Yep.
It's not great if GP surgeries are struggling.
Yeah.
And also if they want to grow the economy, it's not great if businesses are having to maybe not employ, maybe lay people off, not give them pay rises, because those things generate economic growth. So, one definitely to keep an eye on that.
Just to go back to Badenoch for a second, can you imagine the Tories changing their leader again before the next election?
Oh, you can imagine it. Well, they've got form, let's face it.
Oh, they've got form.
They've certainly got a taste for it.
They've got a PhD in this kind of caper.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't even care anymore.
No,
what time is it? Time for a new leader.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, they just went... It becomes a habit, really. They went through so many in the last Parliament. I mean, at the moment, I'd say maybe... I'd say probably not. But you just don't know what's around the corner.
Because every now and again, I was looking at a speech of David Cameron, and whether, you know, some people liked Cameron and some people, you know, I was a bit indifferent to him, but, you know, but nonetheless, just as a political performer, and I was watching him giving a speech, I think it was at JCB, but they always go to JCB, don't these guys, you know, stick the high vis on and the hard hat.
Yeah.
But he was giving a speech on something, and it was just effortless. That was my point. It was just very easy, and he did it so well, and he didn't struggle, and he looked good, and, you know, Cameron was, you know, he's a big guy as well, wasn't he?
Yes,
he's 6'2" or whatever, you know.
He's taller than you think,
taller than you think, you know. So he looked the part, he kind of sounded the part, and he was a posh boy, we know that, but he kind of did it effortlessly, and we haven't really had much of that. Even when Boris was in, he was amusing, but he was always, you know, I used to watch Boris thinking, come on, get the sentence out, man, come on, you can do it,
Well,
Boris,
there was that famous Peppa Pig speech that he gave, remember, at CBI. Was
when he went all over the place,
because he'd lost his thread in the speech.
Yes.
Numbers weren't on the pages, so it was all over the show. It was just...
Been to Peppa Pig World? What?
Oh, my God.
Oh, this is CBI, Boris, what are you doing?
Yeah, well, I was going to say only he could get away with it, but I don't think he did. Even he didn't get away with that,
did he?
So, yeah, it's not an easy job, obviously, and some people are more naturally gifted than others, and I think it's safe to say that Kemi isn't naturally gifted, but she could improve. She'll be getting lots of, and I'm sure there'll be, like they did with Thatcher, you know, they lowered the register of her voice, they did lots of work on how she presented herself, the whole image, and look how successful she was. So that's not to say that it can't happen to Badenoch, but she's not got off to a great start.
Here's someone whose star I think is going to fall, Wes Streeting. Now, he's come in as this new sort of young thing, and, you know, he's different, he's ambitious, totally acknowledging the problems with the NHS, being quite sort of Blairite in his, you know, if we have to use the private sector, we will use the private sector. So he's done all of that. But he's going to come across a problem here, because I'm not absolutely sure that the miracle that he wants to perform is even achievable. I mean, you've got to make tangible difference, haven't you? It's no use showing a graph and going, oh, look, it looks here. People aren't feeling that the NHS is changing. It's easier to get a doctor's appointment. I'm not sitting in A&E for 12 hours of a night. Until you get to that stage, then... You know, he's on a... It's the worst job in politics, isn't it? Apart from all the others.
In many ways, yeah. I mean, that in the Home Office. The Home Office is a bit of a political graveyard, traditionally. But yeah, I mean, he's the one, probably of everyone else in the Cabinet, who is under the most pressure to actually come up with results. Because you're right, people want to see waiting lists come down. They want to be able to get GP appointments, and all that is on him now. He was given another huge chunk of cash in the budget, so he can't really complain about funding. And to be fair, he's not complaining about funding, and I think he realises that he must deliver now. And yet more announcements today. Although the point has already been made today, I think that this type of thing was announced. This, you know, if you don't perform, you get the sack. If you're an NHS manager, New Labour announced that about 20 years ago, and it didn't, and it eventually was quietly dropped because they couldn't implement it. So there will be resistance, which I don't think that actually does him any harm. If it looks like he's standing up to the blob, the establishment, people think, good for you, that it needs a shake-up, but he needs to come up with a result. I
mean, they are talking, and not just across health, but in every aspect of their whole tenure in government is a 10-year plan. This is a 10-year plan, a decade-long plan, etc. And at the rate things are going, they are... Well, I mean, are they likely to win the next election? Probably just by dint of their majority, if nothing else.
Yeah, at the moment they are.
Not necessarily because people go, these guys are great.
No,
but just
it's hard to lose it from here.
It's hard
not
to
impossible,
lose it
but
well, as Boris knows. But this is even greater than.
It's twice the size of his.
Twice the size of his. So, let's move to this story. Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, of course, apparently plotted a £2 per mile charge to drive in London. we heard this a little while ago, didn't we? And it was almost written off as a bit of a conspiracy theory. But it turns out that he was looking into this.
Yeah.
And I think, and I don't know how this happens. I don't know where these guys get their money from, but apparently they plough millions into, like, does it cost that? I'm sure I could get a professor at a university to go, can you work out a pay-per-mile scheme for us?
It does seem quite expensive, certainly.
Yeah, I can't remember what the figure was, but it was just a ridiculous amount of money they'd spent on this proposal, known internally as Project Gladys.
Where did they come up with the name?
I have no idea. You can only imagine there was much chuckling over there at City Hall when somebody came up...
Was it Nurse Gladys Emanuel from Open All Hours, wasn't it? Maybe it's a fan of Ronnie Barker.
It could have been. Maybe Sadiq is a fan of Open All Hours. There's another person I can't imagine laughing very much, Sadiq Khan. But the plan would have added around about 18 quid to a 30-mile trip in inner London.
Yeah, I mean...
Because it's, wanting to drive your car in your own capital city is now akin to second-degree murder.
Well, you can see why it was dropped, because politically, how on earth are you ever going to sell that?
Yeah.
But, if at some point in the future there are no more diesel and petrol cars and we're all driving electric cars, then clearly someone has to replace fuel duty. Yeah. Because we won't be putting petrol and diesel in our cars.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it?
So there will be some sort of charging. I think at the moment, I think people might accept that if they weren't having to fill up their tank as well. Yeah. But try and persuade them that you're already paying fuel duty to run your car, and then you're going to have to pay another tax on top of that to drive the thing. Then I think, good luck to the politicians that thinks that they can get back that.
I remember in the run-up to the mayoral elections, lots of people saying to me, off the record, that this, that they absolutely are looking at this scheme. And then, of course, apparently that Uxbridge and South Ruislip, wasn't it, by-election that the Tories just nudged.
With ULEZ.
Apparently, because we will never know whether it was just on ULEZ.
I think it was.
It appeared to be, didn't it?
Everyone, even Labour accepted it was to do with that.
And then, obviously, Khan thought, oh, God, this is... now I'm about to flog a £2 per mile pay-as-you-drive scheme.
Yeah.
This stuff is not popular.
Not a chance. Yeah. Well, no, it's not when he had re-election coming up the following year. But it was interesting, isn't it? Because Rishi Sunak, the lesson he took from Uxbridge was great, we have to water down all the green initiatives. He did that big thing, and it didn't make a blind bit of difference in the final analysis to the election result. But yeah, I think all the polling suggests that the British public are very much on board for tackling climate change. However, it's when they're asked to, think for things like this. Well, are they really going to vote for it? I find that hard to believe.
And only yesterday, having recently landed on his private jet to the climate change conference in Azerbaijan, Keir Starmer made the point that we're not going to interfere with your lifestyles.
Yeah, I'm not sure how he's going to do that, though.
I don't know how he's going to
reduce 81% of 1990 levels of carbon emissions down by 81%. But he's not going to change the way people live their lives. But that is literally impossible.
Well, we're now hearing rumblings, cutting meat consumption and things like that.
Well, that's what 50%. The experts say. If you are serious about cutting your emissions, you have to basically stop eating meat.
Well, you're known as T-Bone Kev over there at Westminster, so I don't know how that's going to work out for you, Kevin.
That's meant to be a secret.
Sorry about that, yes. And The Guardian is no longer posting on Twitter, apparently.
Yeah.
They've decided that it's a toxic cesspit of utter doom, increasing negative environment, gives rise to a disturbing content. So they've decided they're not going to post on it.
I mean, there's no doubt...
how long that'll last.
Yeah, well, I wonder... Yeah, the thing is, though, journalists are on horns of a bit of a dilemma here, because X, there's no doubt that the nature of it has changed since Elon Musk took over. He let a lot of people back who had previously been banned. Yeah. There's a lot more adverts in your timeline for Bitcoin and stuff. It's all got a bit weird. It's all going a bit odd. But you still need it to share your stories and also to get stories, because politicians put out statements on Twitter,
100%.
More than they put out press releases.
It's a massive divide, isn't it?
So you have to be on it.
I can find great stuff on there, but I've got to go through a lot of drivel to get there.
It's much harder than it used to be.
And because their algorithm is, obviously increasing in its efficiency all the time, you've only got to look at one mad video to be served a shed load more every time you look.
Yeah, you're right. What is also interesting is there's this other platform which is basically a rip-off of X called Blue Sky, which people have noticed, and I've noticed as well. There's been a big migration, it looks like, almost since the Trump re-election and Musk, becoming so powerful in America, that there's been this migration over. My followers in X have plummeted, but in Blue Sky they've gone like that.
Wow.
And
who
not
owns
just me.
Blue Sky?
I've no idea.
Bill Gates, maybe.
Well, yeah,
that's what we need, isn't it?
Well, somebody
the two billionaires.
Well, I'm saying Elon Musk just decides, oh, you know what, I'll just buy Blue Sky as well.
Well, yes. I mean, that's the likelihood of all of that, isn't it?